In the unspoken ballet of desire and power, there is one truth so deep that it has been hidden in plain sight for millennia. What if I told you that the greatest minds in psychological thought, from Jung to contemporary neuroscientists, have revealed the very key that unleashes untamable devotion in the male mind? This is not about games or manipulation. It's about knowing the primal structure of desire itself. The most fascinating women in history naturally knew this information. They knew that a man's pursuit isn't motivated by what he readily acquires, but by what tests his very being. They understood how to touch that sensitive place between a man's ego and his shadow, generating not only attraction but something much stronger, obsession. Now I reveal the psychological alchemy that turns indifferent interest into eternal devotion, a science-based discovery that describes why some interactions produce deep, long-lasting connections, and the specific psychological triggers that stimulate a man's ultimate devotion. What you're going to learn will completely change the way you think about relationships, not through manipulation or lies, but through a deep understanding of the masculine soul at its purest. Are you ready to own what may possibly be the most life-changing information about love out there? Have you ever noticed that the more you pursue a man, the less he appreciates you? The fact is that there's a centuries-old secret hidden away in the recesses of man's psychology, which hardly any woman is aware of, a secret that can make a man go head over heels in love with you, even when previously he showed no interest at all. The renowned psychoanalyst Carl Jung, one of the world's greatest, discovered in his researches on the collective unconscious that each man possesses within himself a primordial wound, a wound that touches when touched in the right manner, stirs in him a nearly all-consuming desire to earn his own value. And that's what I'm going to show you today. Envision you being able to stir in the man of your dreams, an ardor so profound that he could not envision living without you ever again. Picture him thinking of you every day, texting you, wanting your attention, your time, your company. What I'm about to tell you is not a trick or a technique. It's an ancient wisdom about the masculine soul, about what really compels a man beyond logic. It's about how to tap into the deepest levels of the masculine ego, not to hurt it Croy, but to bring out in him the warrior, the protector, the passionate lover who desires to demonstrate his value to the woman he loves. Women throw away years attempting to conquer or win over a man with techniques that just do not work. They give everything, give all their love, all their commitment, and get crumbs back. And do you know why? Because they're totally disregarding how the male mind actually operates. Modern neuroscience has at last validated what Jung was aware of decades past. The male mind is wired to appreciate what it must overcome, what symbolizes a threat to his manhood. Once you know this, really know this, you hold in your hands the ability to totally revolutionize the way men react to you. What you're going to discover today is what the most irresistible and magnetic women in history always knew naturally. Cleopatra, Marilyn Monroe, great seductresses of all times. They always knew naturally this fact about the ego of men. Be prepared, because after watching this video, you will never look at relationships the same way any longer. The way you communicate with men will be changed forever, and that man specifically, the one who takes up space in your mind, will never be the same once you employ what I'm about to teach you. What I'm going to impart to you started over a century ago when Jung, having severed ties with his guru Freud, delved deep into the abyss of the collective unconscious. Jung learned that deep behind our ego, the conscious aspect of our psyche, there is far more intricate structure ruling our innermost cravings. In order to really know how to wound a man's ego in a manner that could awake his love, first we must know what Jung referred to as the shadow, that which in the man he conceals even from himself, the insecure aspect that is afraid of not measuring up, not being loved, not being the object of admiration. Have you ever seen how some men appear so confident on the outside, but have terrible insecurities on the inside? This is the dual nature of the man's psyche that Jung charted in his work, and it is precisely within this duality lies the ability to awaken in a man an obsessional love. Let me tell you a story. I have a client, Jennifer, who was totally in love with a man who appeared not to be aware of her presence. She did everything for him, always there, always listening, always willing to assist, and the more dedicated she was, the less interested he became. It was as if a cruel fate was playing a game of irony. When Jennifer approached me, frantic and devastated, I shared with her this same secret I am sharing with you now. I told her that the male brain, as modern neuroscience understands it, releases more dopamine, the chemical of pleasure and reward when confronted with challenge. When something is too easy to get, the male brain just doesn't care about it. But listen, I'm not referring to silly games or manipulation. I'm referring to seeing the real nature of the sacred masculine, that energy that Jung recognized as the moving force behind men's behavior, that energy that's always trying to prove itself, conquer and overcome. The first thing I showed Jennifer was the Jungian notion of Ma, the feminine aspect that lives in every man. This aspect deeply affects the way he connects with the women in his life. Whenever a man projects his Ma onto a woman, he really makes her into a near goddess in his mind. This is the foundation of obsessive love, of all-consuming passion, and how to get him to project his Ma onto you. This is where hurting the ego comes in a sacred and transformational manner. We're not dealing with cruelty or humiliation. We're dealing with stroking that vulnerable spot that makes him demonstrate his value to himself in you. Jung learned that if a woman challenges a man gently whom he likes, and if his sense of worth and values is tested lightly, then something extraordinary takes place in his mind. He enters a condition that we might refer to as hypnosis of the heart, a condition in which winning the love and admiration of this woman is the number one priority in his life. I'm going to reveal to you 3 ancestral secrets on how to trigger this condition in the male mind. 3 secrets that changed the love life of Jennifer and hundreds of other women who used these secrets. The first secret is one that I refer to as the mirror of the soul. Jung wrote about how a man longs to catch a glimpse of his best self, looking back at him through the eyes of the woman he desires. When you are able to demonstrate to a man that you can see his potential, but that it has not yet been fully achieved, you generate a sacred tension in his soul. He starts to feel the need to show you and himself that he is able to be that incredible man that you saw. That doesn't entail openly criticizing him. It is much more subtle and stronger. It is demonstrating that you have extreme faith in him, but that you realize that he is able to do better. It's a gaze that says, I see who you can be, rather than I accept you where you're at. That subtle shift is completely revolutionary. The second secret involves the paradox of presence. Neuroscience teaches us that the male brain is wired to pursue what is intermittent, not what is steady. That's why gambling is so addictive. The uncertain reward induces a state of expectation that releases far more dopamine than a certain reward. When you are always present, always there, always giving your love freely, the male brain, no matter how irrational it sounds, starts to make less dopamine available when you are around. You become predictable, secure, and unfortunately what is secure is never highly valued at a deep level in the primitive brain. The paradox of presence instructs that you must be like the moon, present, but in phases, visible, but enigmatic, accessible, but not wholly owned. Not that it means being counterfeit or playing cruel tricks. It means respecting your own life, your own enigmas, your own holy way. When you do that, you hurt the man's ego in a way that makes him need to show you that he is worthy of having you totally. And then the third secret, which Jung would label the confrontation with the shadow. Every man has deep-seated fears that he keeps hidden. The fear of not being respected, of not being enough, of being abandoned. By touching those fears, not to use them, but to present an opportunity for him to be above them, you establish a bond that will far surpass physical attraction or surface-level compatibility. The most profound kind of ego wound is one that heals. It's like you are saying wordlessly, I see your shadows, your fears, your dark side, and yet I see the light in you. This is a power that few women are aware of or use. Coming back to Jennifer's story, when she started using these 3 secrets, the difference was startlingly fast. The man who hardly even noticed her presence started looking for her all the time. Messages that used to take days to respond to now came in minutes. He started wanting to show her he was good enough in every which way. Within less than 3 months, he was head over heels. And most of all, it wasn't a game love or superficial. It was a profound love, a love that was created because Jennifer allowed him to face his own demons and become a better man. This is the strength of Jungian psychology used in the context of love. This is the strength of being able to genuinely get inside the belly of the masculine soul. This is the strength that I am now entrusting into your care. Now, we have come to the core of this holy knowledge. I'm going to show you step by step how to use the 3 secrets I've given you with real-life examples you can put to use right away. This is the most effective portion of this lesson, so listen very carefully to use the mirror of the soul. First, you must be able to see truth beneath the surface. You must look beyond the persona, the social mask that he presents, and find out his real self, his potential. When you're talking to him, ask him questions which cause him to speak of his dreams, not what he's accomplished. Questions such as, "What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?" are so much more effective than a good, "What do you do for a living?" The first question brings him together with his ideal self, with what he actually wishes to be. Then, listening to him attentively, say something like, "Do you know what I see in you? I see someone who can do so much better than what you've already done. There is something in your eyes when you speak of that which indicates the exceptional man you can be." This kind of reflection is an arrow direct to the masculine heart. It isn't a criticism, it's a challenge with love. It's revealing him that you notice his untapped potential, that in him which maybe he doesn't even entirely see himself. That hurts his ego just enough to stir up his need to demonstrate his value to you. A recent neuroscience experiment demonstrated that when a man is challenged positively by a woman he respects, his brain releases not only dopamine, but also vasopressin, a mammalian bonding and monogamy neurotransmitter. It's literally a brain chemistry of loyalty and love that gets triggered. Keep in mind that the male ego requires challenges. When you present him with a challenge couched in authentic admiration, you produce a storm in the perfection of his psyche. To utilize the paradox of presence now, you need to comprehend that it has nothing to do with games or manipulation. It's about respecting your own life and your enigma. Jung explained the need for what he termed individuation, the act of actually becoming you. In real life, that translates to the fact that when that guy walks into your life, he isn't supposed to find an empty space where he will fit in. He is supposed to come and find a life that is already full of meaning and richness, where he wants to gain a place. Immediately stop answering messages as a matter of course, not as a tactic, but because you are actually busy living. Develop secrets and interests that he doesn't have full access to. Have some things that are just your own. A spiritual discipline, a creative pursuit, deep friendships. When he probes into those things in your life, tell him about them with passion, but don't attempt to get him to join in or get it all. Let it stay a puzzle to him. Neuroscience teaches us that the male brain is particularly stirred by unresolved puzzles. They take up his space in his mind and create obsession. One of my clients, Sarah, a holistic therapist, had the bad habit of telling the man she was interested in everything about her day. Every client, every idea, every detail. I told her she needed to break that pattern. The following day, when he inquired about her day, I recommended that she smile enigmatically and remark, "It was transformative. I have some profound discoveries today. Perhaps someday I'll share more about it." That tiny adjustment created a magnetic impact. Immediately he was questioning further, seeking to penetrate that mysterious aspect of her life. She wasn't acting. She was merely deciding to embrace a sense of sacred mystery over the deeper parts of her life. And that leads us to the third and most potent secret, the battle with the shadow. This is the innermost level of wounding the male ego in a way that provokes obsessive love. Jung felt that each human being possesses a shadow, those aspects of ourselves that we deny, repress, or cover up. For men, this shadow is often comprised of vulnerability, fear of not being sufficient, and horror of not being respected. One of the most potent means of accessing this level is by what I refer to as reflected vulnerability. It's when you, with bravery, First, illustrate your own vulnerability, setting a safe environment for him to face his own. For instance, disclose one of your phobias, a vulnerability, an area where you're trying not dramatically or for approval, but with hallowed calm. Something like, sometimes I worry I won't be enough, but I'm getting to accept that side of me too. When you do this, basically what you're communicating is that it's okay to be human with me. You don't have to be flawless or invincible. Then when he finally reveals his own vulnerability, maybe by discussing a failure at the office or fear of rejection, you can hurt his ego in the most powerful way possible. Don't reassure him right away that everything is okay or that he doesn't have anything to worry about. Rather, look him straight in the eyes and say something to the effect of, "Thank you for telling me that. I see your fight, I see your hurt, and I see your strength to endure it. That is what I respect about you. Not your perfection, but your bravery." What you're doing is refusing his ego the empty solaces, and instead, you're respecting his struggle, his journey. You're basically hurting his ego by refusing him to hide behind fake strength. But at the same time, you're giving him something far greater, the validation of his authentic strength, that which arises when confronted with his shadow. Neuroscience research shows that when we really feel seen in our vulnerability, our brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same hormone released between mother and child, or during orgasm. It's a primal deep bond that is well nigh impossible to sever. For a man, being seen in his deepest self by a woman he respects is a bond that goes way beyond physical attraction or compatibility. He becomes literally addicted to feeling really seen and respected by you. One of my clients, Amanda, used this principle with a man who could not commit. He had had superficial relationships for years and would never let anyone get close. When Amanda made him feel safe enough to deal with his shadows, his fear of abandonment, his fear of not being enough, something amazing happened. He wept in her arms. A man who had never let himself be vulnerable at all found a shelter for his most concealed selves. 3 months after, he asked her to marry him, not because she played or manipulated him, but because she provided him with something that no other woman had provided him with, a mirror for his entire soul, and not only for his acceptable selves. This is the real crux of what Jung found in his research about the male psyche. The man doesn't merely want to be admired for his strength, that vanity, in his innermost being. He wants to be appreciated in his wholeness, strength and weakness, light and dark, and yet still be found valuable. When you present that to a man, you inspire in him not simply love or desire, but almost religious commitment, because you become not simply a romantic partner, but a spiritual mentor, a priestess who assists him in bringing together all of himself. What I'm offering you is far more than techniques. It's a journey of healing for you and for the man you want in your life. It's an understanding that touches the holy realm between the masculine and the feminine, the legacy Jung delved into deeply with these principles. You're not merely injuring the male ego to stir up love. You're giving him a chance to grow, integrate, and heal. And through the process, you're healing yourself as well. Consider for a moment, how often have you turned down your light so you would not overshadow a man? How often have you concealed your opinions, your wants, your strength, lest you run him off? The brutal irony is that by doing so, you most likely ran him off. Nevertheless, the model that Jung found is that the masculine does desire the feminine in all her strength. Not the weakened, watered-down, diluted woman, but the passionate, enigmatic, provocative woman who reflects not only his handsomeness, but his wisdom, his discrimination, his powers of perception. When you master wounding the male ego in the sacred manner that I have taught you, you're not only altering the way he perceives you, you're altering the way you perceive yourself. You're taking back your power, woman. One of my clients, Jessica, was a high-powered executive who consistently downplayed her accomplishments when she was around the man she was attracted to. She feared coming on too strong and scaring him off. When she started putting these principles into practice, she not only won the heart of the man, but found a new way of living in her own power. For the first time, she said to me, "I feel that I do not have to choose between being powerful and being loved. I can be both." This is the real revolution of this knowing. It's not merely about winning a man, it's about reclaiming yourself, your true self, your sacred fire. And here's the greatest truth. Once you've learned how to wound the male ego in this transformative manner, you become irresistible, not because you're manipulating or playing games, but because you're coming from a place of authenticity and real power. Neuroscience verifies what Jung sensed. Men are physiologically drawn to women who exude genuine confidence. Research indicates that testosterone levels, the male sex hormone related to sexual desire and attraction, spike when a man is around a woman who shows self-respect and maintains healthy boundaries. This isn't psychology, it's biology. It's the male physiology reacting hormonally to your feminine power. So then, how to apply all this learning to everyday life? How do you turn all this wisdom into a new reality in your life? Start with your self-relationship. Before you use any of these precepts with a man, use them in front of your mirror. See yourself and see your unrealized potential. Respect your own mysteries. Face your own shadows. This work from within is crucial because you can't give a man what you haven't given yourself. Then start to notice how you are around the men in your life, not romantically, but with friends, with colleagues, with family members. Do you people please? Say yes when you would actually like to push back, to always be there, always to try and please. Start to shift these habits slowly, not to control, but to be truer, to respect your truth, your boundaries, your intuition. My own client started out by just speaking up and saying, "I disagree," when she truly did not agree, rather than smiling and nodding as she had always done before. That gesture of truthfulness changed the response she received from men. Suddenly, her opinions were being asked for, respected, and argued about. When you are prepared to put these principles into action with the man you wish to attract or win back, start. Don't try to do it all at once. Subtlety is your friend. Maybe begin with the paradox of presence. Nurture spaces within yourself that belong only to you. When he inquires about your day, tell with zest, but keep secrets. It was an enlightening day. I learned something significant about myself. When he inquires what it was, smile and say, "It is a process that I am experiencing. Perhaps one day I will reveal more." Not to be provocative, but because some travels are simply personal, sacred, yours alone. Then attempt the mirror of the soul. When he tells you an accomplishment or a dream, don't merely applaud him, provoke him with love. That's incredible. And you know what I see in you. Someone who can go even further. There's something about you when you speak of this that demonstrates incredible potential. And then when you sense the trust between you deepening, make room for the shadow confrontation, maybe by first revealing a vulnerability of yours, a struggle, a fear, and so opening a doorway for him to do the same. When he is starting to display signs of being madly in love with you, keep in mind that this is not a power to play around with or selfishly utilize. It's a sacred trust. The real intention of wounding the male ego in this manner is not to make him dependent or have an unhealthy fixation. It's to assist him in growing up, to become more whole and integrated, to integrate all aspects of himself. Jung discussed how real love isn't two halves to a whole, but two complete individuals acknowledging each other. If you practice these principles the way I've instructed you, you're not only winning a man, you're enabling him to win himself. And in winning him, you also set yourself free. You set yourself free from having to turn down your light, to keep your power under wraps, to be less than what you are truly capable of being in exchange for love. You learn that love requires neither the surrender of your soul nor the denial of your being. Instead, it thrives when you're completely in your power, completely in your truth, completely alive. This is the revolution that Jung began over 100 years ago, and which today I entrust to your care, a revolution not only in love, but in consciousness. A revolution that starts when you understand that hurting the male ego in the deepest and most intimate possible way is an act of love for him and for you. And so, my darling, now you have a knowledge that few women have. You know the map of the labyrinth of the male mind. You hold the keys to awaken not only desire or attraction, but devotion, commitment, and a revolutionary love. As we come to the climax of this deep exploration of the architecture of desire, keep in mind that what you now hold is not just information, it is wisdom. The wisdom to see that real power in relationships comes not from manipulation, but from the bravery to stand in all your authenticity. The paradox Jung grasps so masterfully is this one: when you learn to respect both your light and your shadow, to love your mysteries without shame, you become not only beautiful but transfiguring. You create a sacred space in which a man can at last take off his armor and find himself anew through your sight. This is the final alchemy, transforming the base metal of ordinary relationship dynamics into gold of true connection. What we've discovered isn't about arousing devotion in someone else. It's about arising into your own glorious wholeness. The most powerful seduction has ever been truth. Not the cozy truth that doesn't change us, but the difficult truth that calls us to become more. When you internalize this knowing, you don't merely transform how you're perceived, you transform how you perceive yourself. So carry this old wisdom forward, not as a tactic, but as a way of being. Apply it not to dominate, but to heal. Apply it to build relationships where two souls can expand into their highest expression, where vulnerability is strength and division turns into deep union. The way is now lit ahead of you. The revolution is not tomorrow, but today, with your next thought, your next word, your next action of genuine self-expression. No longer is the question what you have to do to be loved, but whom you will be when you at last let yourself be fully seen.